Okay. Okay. It's time to complain about stuff. Welcome back to another video. Today we have a very exciting theme, a very exciting video, and that is of course I don't know if it'll be a series, but a video I'm calling Whine and Whine, in which I whine about book-related things that have been frustrating me lately while consuming some lovely wine. And to be on theme with the energy we are capturing in this video, I have a snarky little wine called Salty Girl, because I'm salty about a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So let's do it. And if you would like to follow along, kick back, relax with your own little drink, just please drink responsibly, and we're just going to have a good time. We're going to complain about some things because sometimes you need to just vent. Okay, so there's 3 different categories for this video. The first is, I'm going to be talking about a couple books that disappointed me this year, a couple books that have been letting me down. And then the second category, it was going to be just like book world rants, like things happening in the book world that I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But that has since devolved into specifically book Twitter. So that'll be fun when we get into it. And then the last one is bookish pet peeves and hot takes. Half of them were submitted by you guys, by my followers on Bookstagram, and then I submitted my own half. Like for every pet peeve someone sent in to me, I am providing my own. So without further ado, let's get into it. First category, books that have disappointed me so far this year. And there are more books on this list. I limited it to 3 because the third one I'm going to be talking about for a while, I feel like. So I didn't want to overload it with too many books that have disappointed me, or I don't want to like beat a dead horse. Like if I've already talked about a book that disappointed me, I'm just not including it. I could talk about The Lake House and how that book put me into a bad mood for like a week. I don't know why, but it put me into such a bad mood. But I'm not going to talk about it because there are other books to talk about. So the first one I'm going to talk about, this was an advanced copy I read this month called The Spy and I. So The Spy and I is about a woman, and she is a hacker. She's an ethical hacker. She has a sister who they kind of look alike. That becomes important later. One thing leads to another, and she's supposed to meet her sister for dinner, but all of a sudden there's this guy there and he's all being weird, like he thinks he knows her. And it's this weird meeting. She thinks her sister set her up on a weird blind date, but then it's like there's men with guns and she has to like run and like, you know, runs into this guy that she had just met earlier for an interview, and he kind of takes her off, like, because she's like, I need you to get me out of here. He takes her off. It's a very Chasing Liberty moment, which I noticed.
Excuse me, could you please help me get out of here?
Yeah, why not?
But he takes her away from the evil men. And is this already affecting me? Basically, she finds out that he is a spy. He happens to be her sister's partner. Her sister has gone off the grid when she was supposed to do this meet for this international arms dealer guy. So now she has to go in her sister's place and do this meet. I think what hurt this book is that the premise is really similar to The Blonde Identity, which I read last year. The Blonde Identity by Ally Carter. It's a very similar premise. There's a woman who's not a spy, and she has a sister, and she ends up getting wrapped up into this espionage plot with this mysterious, attractive man claiming to be her sister's partner, but oh wait, he's got some secrets. Can she really trust him? So that hurt it because it just wasn't executed as well as The Blonde Identity was, and at that point I just couldn't help being like, oh, but this isn't The Blonde Identity. Also, just the pacing of their relationship, of these 2 main characters' romance, was so weird. Because, like, when they met during the interview, they were kind of vibing. They had a little flirtation going on. She just found out this guy was a spy, so it's like, okay, hold on, step back. This guy's been lying to you. Can you trust this man? Instead, there's this weird seduction scene where he's all up in her space, all getting, you know, up close and personal with her to try and convince her to do the mission, which was just, the whole pacing of it was just really strange and really bizarre and just did not work for me. And it was like they had this great stride in their relationship where they're like, oh my gosh, we're totally into each other. We're like off in whatever country and we're making out and it's great. We're kind of together now. But then that same day they have a weird conflict where, oh wait, we're no longer sort of together. It was just very weirdly structured. Anyway, next book. I'm flying through these first two books because I really just want to talk about the third one. Next book is Secrets and Lies, which I could have grabbed too because I own it, but I don't feel like it, by Stacey Abrams, aka Selena Montgomery. I don't know. She writes under a pseudonym. I had high hopes for this one, and they just went like this, like, pew, because it was like very weirdly written. Another one where it's like they barely know each other, they've just met, they don't trust each other very much, but it's 40 pages in and all of a sudden they're making out. The other issue I had with this book was you'd be like reading a character's perspective and then all of a sudden it would flip to another character's perspective, like from paragraph to paragraph, instead of like what I feel like most authors do is they put like a little paragraph break. So you're like, okay, either a significant amount of time has passed or we're switching perspectives. Like that's what the little, paragraph break indicates. But this one, it would be like a character starts a phone call. They would say whatever they had to say, like blah, 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 blah. And then the next paragraph immediately after would be like the perspective of the person on the other end of the phone call, who sometimes was a completely inconsequential character that you just met then and just never showed up again, period. I'm like, why does this person's perspective matter? Why does their internal monologue matter? I don't care what's going on with this person. I want you to stick with the main characters of this book, because it would jump around so often that you had no time to just sit in a character's perspective and just like get to know them, what's going on internally. It would just be like, no, we're hopping around. We're hopping around super fast, and I just could not follow it, and I could not get invested long enough for any of the perspectives, which was annoying. I'm all for a romantic suspense book that jumps around to a bunch of different characters. I read Quarter to Midnight last year, and that book had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I was overwhelmed from start to finish because there was just so much going on, so many different perspectives to keep track of, but it was done in a way that was still easy to follow, that was still easy to like get to know the character you're reading about when it's their perspective. This one, it was just like, oh my God, it was too much. I feel like I ran through those way too quickly, but really, like, I feel just kind of indifferent about them. Now, this next book, however, I have so many complicated feelings about, a decent amount of issues with, that it was a book that was like really hard for me to rate. So let's get into it. The book in question is House of Flame and Shadow. So, like last month, I, reread the first book and read the second book for the first time, also that I could read this book. Now, if you have not read this book and you're concerned about spoilers, I'm going to put like a little timestamp that you can just skip ahead to so that you don't have to, listen to this discussion, because I'm going to be diving deep. I'm going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of this book and what didn't work. So let's get into it. So if you've read the second book, it ends in this epic, almost Avengers level way, where you're like, oh my gosh, shit is happening. There's something so epic about Bryce falling through a portal, thinking she's in hell. And if you've read this author's other series, you recognize who finds her in this place. You realize this girl ain't in hell. Your hype is like building and building, and then it comes in like The whole group is there. The whole gang is here. The whole inner circle comes in. Bryce doesn't know it, but the reader knows it. It ends with, swaggering in Mr. Resand coming, being like, hello, Bryce, Quinlan, or hello, Bryce, my name is Resand. That is such an epic way to end a book. That promises so much. You're like, oh my gosh, this crossover is gonna be amazing. And when you set it up like that, when you end in such an epic way, and we're not talking about the epilogue, because who the fuck cares about the epilogue in book 2 when the book ends like that? And then you go over to fucking Ethan? Who cares? When you end the book in that way, you're building expectations. You're like, this crossover is going to be amazing. You're going to have this amazing dynamic between all these characters, so much so that you're giving readers even more by having bonus chapters from ACOTAR characters or set in the ACOTAR world. And then to have the actual crossover be what it was. If you've read the book, it's like Bryce is in the ACOTAR world, but she does not trust these people very much. She's like, these people are Fae, therefore I don't like them. I don't trust them. I think they're horrible. She's in this like dungeon type jail cell where they're kind of interrogating her, kind of trying to figure out, do you pose a threat to our world? And she kind of ends up, getting out. She crosses paths with Nesta, and her and Nesta get trapped in this area together, and they're like walking through, and then Azriel is also there. Bryce sort of ends up outsmarting them at one point, but then it's like, oh, they were just like stringing her along, wanting to see what she would do. And they end up reaching this room. And then it's just like every chapter for Bryce in this ACOTAR world is an info dump about the Asteri. It's just this long, boring info dump. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is how you're using the crossover into the ACOTAR world. Bryce needs allies, and you're not even considering them partnering up. And here's what I will say about the ACOTAR crossover, because can we all agree that it was not very good? I mean, if you're a Nesta girl, which I love Nesta, you're like, okay, I get Nesta on the page. If you're an Azriel girl, which I like Azriel, but I haven't read enough of his perspective to really be as in love with him as most of the book world is, you are like, okay, I get some Azriel, but it's also like, you could have done so much more with it. You could have built some trust between these characters. You could have had them actually bond or something, but instead you do that. To see the way that it was actually executed in this book, and to see the way it was marketed, to see the way the second book ended, just building all this hype, it hints at ACOTAR playing a bigger role than it does. And so my theory is that the only reason, or a major driving force behind why this was done now, why the last book ended the way it did, was driven mainly by a desire to get the ACOTAR readers to read Crescent City. Like, I feel like it was just a marketing tactic. Because if you think about it, you end the second book in such a way, even if there are a chunk of ACOTAR readers who aren't really interested in Crescent City, who haven't read it, when the second book came out, it was immediate. Oh my goodness, Resand, oh my goodness, ACOTAR, oh my goodness, crossovers happening. So you're already building this anticipation of an amazing crossover. So you get all of the ACOTAR readers who were kind of on the fence about the series, who didn't know if they wanted to read it. You have them buying Crescent City 2, pre-ordering Crescent City 3, just so they can get, hints of their characters who they haven't had an update from since, 2021? I don't know. There's something that's kind of shady about it to me. Maybe people are perfectly satisfied. Maybe that's exactly what you wanted from an ACOTAR crossover. I don't think so, but maybe it was. Tell me why I was more excited by the tiny Easter egg of Throne of Glass, with Lydia being a descendant, a relative, a distant relative of Aelin. It is mentioned once. And I mean, that's not even like all of the issues I have with this book. I mean, plenty of people have brought up Therion and just how that character was so greatly fumbled. And yeah, I agree. Even if you were kind of intrigued by him in the first book, the absolute like downfall of that character, it's like he doesn't have any development really over the course of 2 whole books, 2 books that are about this long. And you're telling me that one character just doesn't develop at all? Another character that I couldn't care less about that she spent far too much time with was Ethan. The heavy hitters on the team, aka Bryce, Hunt, and Rune, they're all in dire straits. Bryce is on another world. Hunt and Rune are being tortured, right? They are going through the most. There is like heavy stakes there. But she cut so often to fucking Ethan and him just like agonizing over the fate of the wolves. Which granted, you can be worried. You can want the wolves to have a better future. But now is not the time for your side quests to find a better alpha. And I liked him at the end of the first book, but I have just liked him less and less the more the series has gone on. And the puppy love he has with Bryce, I just don't care. I really don't. There are 2 characters that carried this book that I was eating up every single one of their chapters that were the main characters for me. The rest of it, yeah. So I'm like, how do I rate this? If I could split this into 2 books, Rune and Lydia's chapters would be 5 stars. The rest of it, like 3. For me, my issue with Bryce is that you're trying to convince me that she is a master strategist and she's got all these different plans and her plans are layered and they never go wrong. You're trying to convince me that she is that competent and that she is that good when really like the span from like Crescent City to now has been what, like 1.5 years, 2 years? Like when she's only been in the role of needing to really have these kind of strategies in play. Because I mean, like up until the first Crescent City book, sure, she put on the persona of like, oh, clueless party girl. People underestimate me, but that's how I want it. She, I guess, had to hide her powers, which would be like, okay, that's where she has strategy, that's where she has deception. But I just simply do not believe that she is on Aylin's level of having plans that no one knows about that are always executed so dang well. Like, I don't believe that. I believe Aylin. Like, when you read Throne of Glass, I believe that Aylin would be able to do that. Not Bryce. I just was not a fan of Bryce in this book. Which is why I think Lydia was the main character. So much more interesting things, so much more layers. I could actually believe that she would have all of these contingency plans, all of these strategies, all of these ways to be able to deceive the people around her. Because that makes sense. She has been in that position for God knows how long that she's actually good at it. Bryce, I don't really believe that. The other thing was I don't understand how or where the need is for a 4th book. Because going into it, I looked up, I was like, how many books are in the Crescent City series? And I saw an article that said there's going to be a 4th Crescent City book. So reading it, I was like, okay, they're not going to be able to wrap up this conflict. Something's going to go wrong. There's going to be a cliffhanger. But they were able to defeat the Asteri relatively easily. And now it's all nice and good. I mean, like, they're going to run out of electricity. So is that what book 4 is about? The quest to find electricity? Like, what? I just don't get it. And I don't want to say this book was a waste of time. I mean, are you satisfied with this? I wasn't. I don't think this was a very good book at all. I think that's all I have to rant on when it comes to this book. How did you feel? I'm holding it. I know I'm holding it upside down. I'm not drunk. How did you feel about this book? Was this all you wanted it to be? Also, please give me some fantasy recs that will actually be good. That will actually have like a bunch of different like character dynamics, a bunch of different bonds that I will actually feel fulfilled by. Okay, next. Now I need my notes and we'll top off while we're at it. So we're done with the books that disappointed me. Now we're gonna go into my rant about how Twitter, specifically book Twitter, well, all of Twitter, but I'm talking specifically about book Twitter, how it's just this annoying cesspool of misery. I have barely had 2 glasses and I can already feel it. I'm such a lightweight. We're gonna be starting with the subcategory of book Twitter snobbery. Starting with a relatively recent one. I don't know if it's going to be blown over by the time this video goes up, but there was a person who just like happily tweeted a picture of her shelves and is just like, look at my shelves. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous. And it spiraled into this ridiculous thing of book Twitter just lashing out to her because she had some smutty art with her books. It's not that deep. Why are you coming after a person for the way they decorate their shelves? Me and myself personally, I don't particularly love having smutty art prints. That's just me. If she is perfectly fine with having a couple, sexy little art prints on her shelves, good for her. Let her live her life. And people saying she had like an addiction to porn, I saw multiple quote tweets of that being like, oh my gosh, if I had someone over and they saw that, I would be so embarrassed. One, if she had someone over and they saw that and she wasn't embarrassed, good for her. If she was having someone over and felt like she would be embarrassed, you know what you can really easily do with 2 art prints that are propped on your shelf? Do I need to demonstrate for the simpletons on Twitter? You can grab the art print and you could even just tuck it between 2 books and no one would be the wiser. I think if she likes the way her shelves are, that's all that matters. Anyone who is just a snob about what other people enjoy, what other people are doing with their life, that is not harming anyone. If you're going to be a snob about that, I don't have any respect for you and I don't want to be in your orbit. Next topic of conversation under BookTwit being a snob. This one is really a non-issue because everyone that responded to the original tweet was in support of the author. So it's not that much of an issue. It's everyone's just like, oh my God, you hate fun. Got it. And that is a tweet that someone made where they were criticizing Kimberly Lemming's Mead Mishap series. If you've watched my romance recommendations, you know I love the Mead Mishap series. I think it is so much fun. And I think the titles are a lot of fun. But this person was criticizing book 2, which was That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. And they were criticizing that title, being like, are you serious? I don't know if they came out and said it was a dumb title, but they were basically saying like, how is this title the one that was published? Everyone came in defense of Kimberly Lemming, which I support. But I'm just like, why do you tweet that? That you're criticizing it just means that you hate fun. Maybe you have a boring life because you can't find entertainment or joy in the silly things, in the fun things.
You're gonna look at me and you're gonna tell me that I'm wrong? Am I wrong?
But at the end of the day, it wasn't much of an issue because everyone was defending the author. Everyone was supporting the author. Everyone was saying, that title makes me want to buy the book. So it's not that much drama. It's just like the fact that it became such a thing that bothers me. But while you're here, go read the Mead Mishap series if you like fun. Okay, next, we're going to be talking about how people on the internet are truly insane. So, let me set the scene for you. Author posts an art print, shares an art print of her upcoming release. You've got tall, dark, and handsome man, and you've got a little, petite ballerina woman. Twitter user posts this, being like, oh my gosh, forbidden romance. So excited. I love this art. So cute. And it just explodes. People hate the art. People hate the fact that forbidden romance is being associated with a cishet romance. It's not the most deeply forbidden, but the book is a ballerina and her physical therapist, I think, which, while not strictly forbidden, it's definitely frowned upon. And I'm going on this tangent now before I've even really set up the issue, but it may not be the most forbidden thing in the world. To me, I equate it with the umbrella that is enemies to lovers. Walk with me on this, because forbidden romance could encapsulate so many things. It's like a spectrum. You could go from slightly frowned upon, where the characters would definitely feel, I am not allowed to be with this person, but I have feelings for them. It feels forbidden to them. And you could always go to the other end of the spectrum where it's literally, my life could be in danger if I proclaim love for this person. So it's an umbrella. Tropes are an umbrella, and there's a lot of nuance to it. When you're marketing a book, you're not going to market it as, oh, a slightly frowned upon romance. No, you want to draw people in, so you're going to say forbidden romance because that's what people like to read. So you're going to be like, this is a forbidden romance. You know, they might latch onto that trope and want to read it, even though it might not be as forbidden as other romances. That's the point I'm trying to make. Tropes are an umbrella. And I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, this is about the art print for Lucina. Is that how I say her name? Lucina Coney's The Darkest Corner of the Heart. Now, as someone who took 2 years of AP art, I look at the art print and I'm like, I don't strongly dislike it, first of all. I don't think it's the best art I've seen because there's a height difference, but what it looks like is that the artist had 2 different layers. They had the layer for her and they had the layer for him. And instead of drawing him as being taller, it looks like they drew him as the same height she was, and then just like scaled him up a little bit because he looks unnaturally large compared to her instead of just a normal height difference. That is my issue with the art. But I'm not gonna go and just drag the author, write a fake excerpt pretending it's from the book, post the excerpt with very vague phrasing that could be misconstrued as this is an excerpt from the book.
Wait a damn minute. Wait a damn.
That was really weirdly phrased. Basically what happened is this person decided, I really don't like this art. Well, I don't know what they decided, but this is what I'm saying they decided. They decided, I don't like this art. I don't like that this author said this is a forbidden romance between a ballerina and her physical therapist. So therefore, I am going to do something truly insane. I am going to write a fake excerpt that is terribly written, that is cringy, and I'm going to play it off as it is an actual screenshot from an advanced copy of the book. But I'm not going to specifically say that it's not really from the author's book. I'm going to be very vague about it. I'm going to use, Twitter sayings and twist it. I'm going to use social media slang and twist it in a way that it could be misconstrued as the author's actual work. Is that not the craziest thing you've ever heard? Get a job. It sounds fake, what I'm saying, but it is a real ass thing that actually happened. Yeah. Twitter is a wild place. Moving on. Next one. I've had such a journey with this topic because I threw it on my list as something to talk about. Oh, that is gorgeous. Look at how pretty that is. Anyway, I threw this on my list as something that I was just like, this is such a non-issue, right? This is a personal preference thing. I personally do not like this. But it's not that deep. I'm just not going to buy this book or this edition of this book. In the time from me originally putting this on my list to now, it exploded into this huge Twitter drama. And I'm like, how did this go from a personal preference non-issue to something that I actually have to unpack? So if you are as chronically online as me, you know what I'm talking about, and you know that I'm talking about the Lenny Kaufman cover of Bride that Steamy Lit commissioned for their special edition. They revealed it. I saw it, and I was like, oh. I was let down by the cover. I do not think that that is the best cover that they could have made for it. And my critique isn't of the artist herself, because she just did what was asked of her. She did not decide to make this cover on her own. She was given guidelines. My critique is of Steamy Lit and the direction they decided to go with the special edition of this book. Maybe Steamy Lit wanted people to think that this was a contemporary romance. I don't know. When I saw this cover, I'm like, I want to conduct an experiment. I texted my sister. I'm like, what do you know about Bride by Allie Hazelwood? And she's like, nothing. I'm like, perfect. And I sent her the cover. And I'm like, what do you think this book is about? I don't remember what she said. But it wasn't that it was an arranged marriage between a vampire and a werewolf. And I think that is the problem with the cover, is that it does not communicate paranormal romance well in any way, shape, or form. You have Lo on the cover, and you also have a wolf in the back, but someone said that it's giving like billionaire workplace romance where he falls in love with his assistant, but also he has a pet wolf. And I agree. I don't think they used the artist to the best of her abilities. And I don't know, have you seen the covers that she's done for Olivia Dade? Have you seen the covers that she's done for Stimulant in the past? Where there's like unique posing maybe, a nice whimsical background maybe, or having a contemporary book with like a clinch cover. She has range as an artist. She's a phenomenal artist. And so the fact that Stimulant directed her to create a book cover that I feel like could have been just any other contemporary romance is an issue to me. I feel like they just didn't want to take risks with the cover. I don't know why. If you don't take into account the fact that it does not feel like a paranormal romance, it also does not feel unique. And that is a problem to me. I feel like they could have walked the line. If they wanted the pastel romantic vibe of the cover, they could have done that while also incorporating more elements that effectively communicated this is a paranormal romance. And that critique is valid. If you don't like that cover, if you don't think it communicates paranormal romance, that is valid. You can critique that. But book Twitter is like, oh, let me seize this opportunity to just shit on Lenny Kaufman. Your critiques need to be constructive. It can't just be hating on it. Like, you are more than allowed to not like Lenny Kaufman's art, to not like the cover that she did for Stimulant. You are valid if you did not like it. But if you're using that to just hate on her as an artist, that's not okay. Because I feel like we can all agree that Lenny Kaufman is a skilled artist. Regardless of how you feel about the covers, regardless of how you feel about how many covers she's done, she has talent. Because I'd like to see you try to do the covers that she does. I know I couldn't. And it was just mind-boggling to me. Because the biggest critique I saw was that Lo had a buzz cut. And I'm like, you do realize that that is not Lenny's fault. That's how he is in the book.
What's not clicking? What's not clicking?
You can have your preferences, but I'm like, just because he doesn't fit what you find to be attractive, it's not a mark against the artist and their skill. It's not necessarily even about the author and what they decided to write. That's just your preference. And why are you attacking other people for that? I mean, you shouldn't critique any artist who does book covers, really. Because they are given, like, guidelines. They are given instructions. They are just doing their job. They're doing what they're told. We are moving into the final category, which is bookish pet peeves and hot takes. And I asked my lovely followers on Bookstagram to contribute their opinions. And for each of their opinions, I have added one of my own. So, let's get into it. The first one is actually really interesting. I actually despise the book talk table in bookstores. What about Bookstagram? I was not disagreeing, but I was like, okay, I'm going to present my opinion on the first half. But then your second half, I was like, you know what? You are right. Because I will defend the book talk table. Because there are people, once again, on Twitter who get very pretentious about the book talk section in a bookstore. If book talk is getting people to read, I will support their displays in bookstores. Because I've had such a complicated journey with reading, and where I'm at now, I love reading. Reading makes me so happy, and I just want more people to find that joy out of reading. And if book talk does that for people, if people find books on book talk that make them fall in love with reading, either for the first time or again, I will support it. Because I feel like Book Talk has done more for fostering a love of reading than the school system has. But I will say, I agree with you on what about Bookstagram. Bookstagram, in my experience, has been the most positive, the most uplifting of all the different kinds of book social media platforms. Bookstagram deserves more credit than it gets. And I think the only reason that it's a book talk table in bookstores is just because TikTok is so huge. Okay, so my pet peeve that I'm adding. Oh, I've been waiting to talk about this one. People that complain about readers that read 100+ books a year. Because I don't see the people reading 100+ books a year complaining about people who read, like, I don't know, 10 or 20. And I'm like, why can't you just let people live their lives? You can create a community, you can build your platform around uplifting people who don't read a lot. But the fact that you gotta bring in us people that read over 100 books, I don't know, there's something weird about that to me. And so I just feel like we should be happy for each other if we like reading. We shouldn't be like comparing how much one person reads over another. Okay, next. This person says, there's too many books with a blank of blank and blank titles. It's so uncreative at this point. And I agree with this when it comes to fantasy. Fantasy has overdone that. Other genres, I don't know if I notice it as much because one of my favorite books from January and one of my favorite books from February. Same series. First one is A Song of Sin and Salvation. The second one is A Duet of Darkness and Dreams. Those are contemporary romance, and so I don't really notice the fact that they have that structure of a blank of blank and blank. But I feel like it happens so much with fantasy that I'm like, okay, we can move on. My bookish hot take / pet peeve is sort of in the vein in that it is about book titles. I don't love books that their titles that are either a Taylor Swift song or Taylor Swift lyrics. I love Miss Taylor Swift. She is like my number one artist on Spotify every year, every month, all the time. I'm always listening to her music. But for me, it feels uncreative. I don't know. It feels like you're probably trying to draw on the Taylor Swift audience a little bit. I just don't think you need to name your song after a Taylor Swift lyric or song title. Wait, I did that wrong. You don't have to name your book after a Taylor Swift song or Taylor Swift song title. You can have your book be inspired by a Taylor Swift song. Like if you listened to 'Tis the Damn Season and you're like, this has romance book potential, you can totally just build that out into a story. I'm fine with that. I support that 100%. But I'm kind of tired of seeing a book and being like, oh, that's a Taylor Swift song or Taylor Swift lyric. Like, just be creative with it. Okay, next, this was submitted by one of my followers. If a reviewer's social media brand is focused on books they hate, I won't follow because I don't have the time. And I agree. I don't know if I've come across this very much. I've definitely seen people who have hated books by a certain author and have made that very clear how they hate the books, and they continue to read books by that author. And that hasn't caused me to unfollow. I just ignore their content that is about those specific books by that specific author. I think posting negative reviews is 100% valid. You can post a negative review as long as you do not tag the author in it. I don't want people to feel like they can't post negative reviews. I feel like for me, my limit is 2 books by an author. If I have not enjoyed 2 books by an author, I'm just not going to read the author. I'm not going to talk about them. I think it's ridiculous to build your brand around hating a specific author. And I'm just like, give it a rest. If you don't like an author, just don't read their books. You don't have to make a big thing about it. Just move on with your life. Just live a happier life reading books you actually enjoy instead of being miserable on the internet. That was dramatic. I'm so sorry. Because why not, like, spend time uplifting authors that you love? Build a brand around uplifting authors that you love. And at the same time, you could post about books you didn't enjoy, but, like, don't build a brand around an author you don't love, because that's just, that is engagement bait to get people to comment, to get people to disagree with you, because that way you're getting engagement. So don't do that. Okay, my pet peeve that I have put on this list is when a person knowingly makes a point of talking about how much they hated a certain book when they're in conversation with a person who loved that book. Oh my God, I hate it. That's kind of in the vein of building your brand around a book you hate. Like, say you see someone post about a book and they're just raving about how much they love that book. Don't go into the comments and be like, oh, I hated this book. Because then you're just an asshole. Just don't ruin people's enjoyment of something because they enjoy it and you didn't. Once again, I'm going to reiterate, you're allowed to not enjoy it. But just be a nice human and don't make a point of talking about how much you disliked something in front of someone who really loved it, because that could just kill their enjoyment of it. Just treat people with kindness. Next one. This was submitted by a follower. And they're talking about stiff books that are a struggle to hold open without breaking the spine. Oh my God, yes. There's nothing better than a floppy book, and there's nothing worse than a book that you feel like you can only read this book has flop, but pretend this book doesn't, where you can only read like this because you don't want to break the spine. If you like breaking spines, that's fine. I don't. My pet peeve that I've added, people who borrow books and never return them. When I rediscovered my love of reading, full force, where I became fully obsessed with reading, I was like, you know what? I want my friends to understand the hype behind reading. And so I was like, here are some books that I enjoyed, and I think, like, based on who they are as people, they could possibly like this too. So I would just give them the books, and I'm like, here you go, read them. I've never gotten those books back. They're gone forever. Because, one, they never read the books, and two, they just didn't have the decency to give them back. If a person gives you a book and you know you have no intention of reading it, just give it back and be like, I'm sorry, but it's not my thing. I just don't like reading. Just be honest about it and give them their book back so they don't have to waste money buying that book again. Okay, next one. This is actually like a two different pet peeves. Bent pages. 100% agree. I am not a dog ear person. I do not dog ear. I think my sister, whenever I give her a book, whenever she reads the book that I give her, she lives in fear of destroying it. She texts me and is like, is it okay if I take a bath and read this book while I'm in the bath? Apparently I'm a dictator with my books. This person's other pet peeve is books that come off as whiny. And I agree, but I also feel like that is so subjective. What is whiny to one person won't be whiny to another person, or what is whiny to one person will come off as whiny to another person, but they're like, I can understand why this is whiny. You know, like the character needs to go on a journey to become not whiny. So I like agree to a point where it's like, yeah, I don't love it when a character is just whining all the time, but I feel like there's like room for forgiveness when it comes to a character's whininess. Okay, my pet peeve, which I've seen so many times. Okay, I don't love when authors or book influencers use the word clean to describe closed-door romances. The connotation of clean, I feel like immediately assumes that all open-door romances are dirty, and I just don't love that. I feel like it's just so much easier to call a book a closed-door romance instead of calling it clean. I just don't like it. It makes me feel icky. Open-door romance books with smut are not dirty. You do not have a porn addiction if you read an open-door romance. I read open-door romance and I read closed-door romance, and I love them both equally. Some of my favorite books have been closed-door romance, and some of my favorite books have been open-door romance. So just don't use the word clean, because we're readers. We love books. We love the written word. So I feel like we should know that there is a certain connotation to certain phrases, to certain words. And clean just feels icky to me. This next one I love because I so agree. Because people are pretentious. Anyway, This person says, unless you've got a master's in history, I don't ever want to see not historically accurate in a review. I love whoever said that because I so agree. Okay, now we're gonna end with my pet peeve. I don't know why, like, social media, bookish social media can never escape this debate, even though it shouldn't be a debate. It just pops up all the time, and I'm like, can't we let it go at this point? But no, I am plagued with this debate. And that is people who say more romance books should end without a happily ever after or a happy for now. I'm tired at this point. Like, I'm tired of seeing it. I know the majority of people disagree with people who say this. And maybe the majority of people who say this are doing it for engagement. But can't we just let it go? Can't we move on to something else? Something that is essential to romance is a happily ever after or a happy for now. And anything else could be considered a love story, but it's fiction, and therefore you are not going to read it expecting a happily ever after. Romance as a genre is about a love story, and it's supposed to end happily. That is just the facts. Like, you can play with the genre conventions as much as you want, but as soon as you deviate from the happily ever after, you are no longer operating within the romance genre. And I don't know if this is controversial. So I feel like if you're an author who says that romance books should end without a happily ever after, you're only saying that because you want to write a literary fiction love story but have the same amount of sales and hype that romance get. That's quite the claim to make. But, like, I don't know. I feel like that has some weight to it. And I've seen people say, like, you know, writing is an art form. You don't want to be bound by rules, by constrictions, by blah, 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 blah. I mean, yes, writing is an art form. You can do whatever you want with it. But when you're marketing it to sell, you're going to be put into a category. And you can write this devastating love story, this tragic love story, this achingly romantic story that does not end in happily ever after, but you also have to just make terms with the fact that when you are selling this, when you are marketing this, you're not going to be able to capitalize on the fact that it's a romance. My battery died. What was I saying? Oh God. Similar to the way in which, like, an essential convention of the horror genre is that people are gonna die. An essential convention to the romance genre is that it's gonna end happily. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to, like, wrap that up. I'm losing my train of thought. I think that's a sign that I need to stop filming. So, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know if you want this to become a series, because I kind of had fun with this, but I feel like it's not going to be like a super frequent series. Like, maybe I'll just start making a list of things that I need to complain about, and once I've had enough of that, I'll make another video. So if you want this to be a series, if you want me to do this more, if you want me to see, if you want to see me get tipsy on camera and complain about book related things, then tell me in the comments and leave a like. I've already said that, but subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video, which I don't know if it's going to be as fun as this. I feel like this is going to be fun. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, bye.